Pay the ransom and risk going to jail for at least 15 years? Well, according to a report by SPM Intelligence, a leading research consultancy group, the insurgence of kidnapping in Nigeria is at an all-time high, with an average of 13 people abducted each day during the first half of 2021. Although many believe the terrorist group Boko Haram, who abducted 276 Chibok girls and sparked the Bring Back Our Girls global campaign back in 2014, is solely responsible for the recent abductions of students and teachers, but it's actually a gang of what locals call bandits from the northwestern region of the country, seeking financial gain, reportedly extorting 4.9 million from ordinary Nigerian citizens. In an effort to end the escalating abductions, a new bill was introduced to make it illegal to pay the ransom to these perpetrators, shutting down schools and ramping up security patrols. But is that enough? We'll discuss this and more on today's edition of Our Voices. Hello, I'm Aliyu, and this is Our Voices. On today's program, we'll take a closer look at the kidnapping crisis and how mass abduction for monetary gain is a thriving business in Africa. We'll also examine how governments like Nigeria are responding to these ransom demands. Let's begin with the amendment of the 2011 Terrorism Prevention Act that has recently come under fire. Nigerian lawmakers in July 2021 voted on a bill criminalizing ransom payments after reports that payoffs were made to resolve a series of mass kidnappings. However, the bill was dismissed. It would have imposed up to a 15-year prison sentence. It was also criticized by the families of kidnapping victims. Timothy Obiezu reports from Kaduna, Nigeria.
Paul Michelia and his wife woke up one morning in March to the frightening news that their son had been kidnapped from a forestry college in Kaduna State. Yahaya Michelia was taken along with 38 others and marched through the bush for 21 days with few stops.
If you get tired, they just kill you and continue moving. You can't just say you're tired. They waste anyhow. So no matter how tired you are, you just have to keep moving.
He was eventually released in early May. Also freed were Friday Sani's two girls, Victory and Rejoice Sani, who were among the kidnapped students. While they were held, their captors contacted school authorities to demand a $1.2 million ransom from the government.
When they told us that they don't need our parents' money, we were a bit relieved because we thought that since it's government, we'll not stay long there.
But the government did not pay, and parents of the kidnapped victims negotiated a ransom. Nigerian authorities strongly opposed these ransom payments, saying it only makes the kidnappers more powerful. Security expert Ebenezer Oyetakin supports the government's bill.
It's a very difficult decision, but it is a decision that is worth taking because actually, when you pay this ransom, maybe 500 million, 800 million, you have empowered them to purchase more bazookas, AK-47. It will encourage others who will also want to venture into it.
But the parents of kidnapped victims like Friday Sani, who negotiated a ransom for their daughter's release, opposed the bill.
It is better I do it, let my children come out and be under the roof of their father, let the government arrest me, then we meet in court.
There is no how we'll fold our hand and watch our children in the bush, and then you tell us that anybody who negotiates the life of his child will be persecuted.
Armed groups seeking ransoms have increasingly been kidnapping students from northern Nigerian schools. Around 1,000 students are estimated to have been kidnapped in mass raids since December. While most have been freed, the release of those still held by captors is still hanging in the balance. Timothy Obiezu for VOA News, Kaduna, Nigeria.
So we visited the streets in Nigeria to see what people are saying about the controversy surrounding criminalizing the people who are paying kidnappers in our Your Voice segment.
Whether legislation or not, I think we have a bad government. So what needs to happen is, if actually this government, the leaders, the people that call themselves the rulers, should be eradicated. Some of them are part of the kidnappers.
I think what will work is action. When the government starts taking action. When I mean action, I mean start taking this thing seriously, going into wherever it is these bandits are working, actually do something about it, not just about passing one law or legislation or something about. I don't think that will work. We need action. We need good action.
The legislative have not worked. I think the government should do more to protect our children in school, especially children in the northern part of Nigeria. You cannot just walk into any school in the south here and say you want to go and carry children. It's not done. So, and I noticed also that most of these schools in the north, their environment is so, there's no fence, nothing. They should start by taxing all the schools. The schools should put fence. There should be fence in all schools, all boarding house, or even day school. Any school must have fence. One, and the government should also create a safe haven for students in school by making sure there are security officers, police officers, or whatever in all the schools.
Legislations against this kidnapping of women and girls, it's not going to stop, because there is the level of literacy is very low, and there's also easy access to drugs. And because if you are literate, you understand that the sanctity of human lives, you appreciate it. But if you don't, nothing happens. And if you are under the influence of drugs, anything goes. You damn the consequence. So once you can attach more importance to level of literacy, and then two, ensure that illegal drugs, people don't have access to it.
It's time for a break. But first, what do you think about the proposed legislation against relatives paying a ransom to kidnappers? Do you think it will curb the abductions? Share your views on our social media platforms. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Our handle is at VOA Our Voices. We are also on WhatsApp. Our number is on your screen. When we return, we'll take a closer look at how the fear of bandits is causing low school attendance records in Nigeria's Kaduna state. We'll be right back.
Empowerment and humanity towards a better world.
Economic and social progress of every society.
Facts and information from key players rather than spectators in politics, business, science, and technology.
City, rural, educated, or underprivileged. We care and we listen to what matters to you.
Your voices are our voices.
Welcome back. You're watching Our Voices. The practice of kidnapping children from schools initially began in 2014 with the terrorist group Boko Haram, but the tactic is now being used by gangs and bandits since the surge of abductions in December of 2020. Nearly a year later, Nigerian authorities are slowly reopening schools in northern Kaduna state after being shut down for nearly 2 months due to insecurity. The region has suffered a string of armed kidnappings at schools, and the United Nations Children's Fund says about 1 million Nigerian children are afraid to return to school. Timothy Obiezu has more.
Naomi Ibrahim opened the school in Kaduna 7 years ago after an attack by Boko Haram militants forced her to flee her hometown in Nigeria's Borno state. Her goal is to help children affected by conflict to access basic education. But she says waves of violence and mass kidnappings are threatening her work and keeping students away.
Some from Borno, some from Adamawa, some are from Gombe and other places like that. We are just praying. It is God that is keeping us safe.
Kaduna is one of the states hardest hit by mass school kidnappings that began in northern Nigeria late last year. Since December, the government reports more than 1,000 school children have been seized from schools in the region. The kidnappings are usually carried out by criminal gangs demanding ransom from the victims' families. To stop the problem, Kaduna state authorities closed schools in July but reopened them, saying the situation had improved. Community leader Mohammed agrees.
It's an upgrade, really, in the issue of security attention from the government. Why? Because the governor himself has made a very good clarion call from all the security apparatus, and they have all gathered here in Kaduna. They have gone into the forest to see where their stations are.
But Aishatu Musa says the fear that bandits could kidnap her children from school has not gone away.
I'm scared about what's happening now. That's why I don't want them to go to school yet.
UNICEF estimates 1 million Nigerian children could miss out on education due to security concerns. The agency estimates Nigeria has the greatest number of out-of-school children in the world, about 13.2 million. The actual figure could be even higher, says Nigeria's UNICEF education manager, Rudra Sahur.
In the months of May, June and July, there are regular attacks, particularly in the north central and northwest region. Okay, and as a precautionary measure, nearly 11,000 schools closed during that time. Okay, and if you see, no doubt those schools are closed for a brief duration, and all these schools are open now. But still, the fear as well as the apprehension on the mind of parents is there.
For now, schools like this one run by Naomi Ibrahim will carry on with classes, despite uncertainty about whether it is safe to do so. Timothy Obiezu for VOA News, Abuja.
With kidnappings and violent attacks rampant in northern Nigeria, some civilians have grown impatient with security forces and have taken up arms. VOA's Haruna Shehu has the details from Kaduna.
Awal checks his guns as he prepares for another night of security patrol. He and other young men have been doing this for months. They are part of a volunteer youth patrol trying to protect their community from armed gangs, which are kidnapping civilians. We are not naming the town or giving the real names of volunteers for security reasons.
I have decided to arm myself with these guns to protect my family because the government has failed to keep us safe.
Aliyu, who is leading a patrol team on this night, says there is no option but to carry a weapon.
This has become necessary to keep our families safe. Cattle rustlers and kidnappers have been terrorizing us. They are killing us too. We can't fold our arms and allow this to continue.
Kaduna State is at the epicenter of abductions that have traumatized the country. Kidnapping for ransom has surged since 2020, with almost 2,000 people taken in Kaduna State alone, according to its government. Another 937 were killed in bandit attacks. Nasiru Sani now supports community patrol after kidnappers struck his family compound in December.
I was in my room after midnight when I heard noise from the compound. Through the window, I saw 6 people with guns. They shouted, "We are Boko Haram. We will kill you if you don't open the door." They put their guns through my window and started firing into the room. I held one of the guns, but they overpowered me. They shot at me several times.
The 40-year-old spoke from the Kaduna hospital where he was treated in January for multiple gunshot wounds. While he was recovering, Sani was also trying to free his pregnant wife.
They kidnapped my wife and demanded a ransom of 500,000 naira. We raised the money and sent someone to deliver it, but they abducted the messenger too and asked for more money.
Sani's wife finally was released in late February after he paid a total of 1 million naira, more than $2,400. When communities resort to armed civilian patrols, things can go wrong. Bandits killed 4 vigilantes in Kaduna in May. In neighboring Niger State, bandits killed 30 vigilantes in a single incident in June. Neighborhood patrols say they have been getting guns through back channels, especially after a 2019 federal ban on civilian gun ownership. But those guns can be defective. Jafar's handmade gun unexpectedly discharged during patrol, wounding his hand.
It is better to sustain this injury than to be kidnapped from my house. Kidnappers may demand a ransom that I cannot afford.
In August, the governor of northern Katsina State called for civilians to arm themselves against so-called outlaws. But some security experts say arming civilians escalates problems.
In certain instances, there are what I would call community leaders or even militia leaders that are obtaining these weapons and giving it to the people. The consequence of that is that it's further driving the conflict.
Armed civilian patrols have been accused of vigilante justice, including summary executions. In Niger State alone, at least 86 people were arbitrarily killed in the first 4 months of the year, according to a Cattle Breeders Association. Fatalities have been reported in other parts of the country too. The federal ban on civilian gun ownership is reinforced by Kaduna state law, says the state's commissioner.
It is illegal for you to possess firearms without a license. There is no justification for individuals or citizens to take arms against fellow citizens. If you feel that someone threatens you, what you should do, you should report to security agencies.
But many civilians, uncertain that security agents will show up in time to avert danger, favor self-protection over obedience to the law. Haruna Shehu, VOA News, Kaduna, Nigeria.
Joining me to discuss the controversy surrounding the kidnapping ransom ban is Kabiru Adamu, chairman of Beacon Security Consulting Firm. He tells us about the challenges that governments face in combating the surge of kidnapping in the country. I began by asking him the reality of the situation on ground.
We just did a trend analysis of the different threat elements in Nigeria in 2021. When we picked kidnap for ransom, the total figure for that period, January to December, is about 5,031, thereabout. And it represents an almost 1,000% increase for the figure year to year, 2020 to 2021. Now, the major perpetrators are gunmen in Nigeria are called bandits. These are gunmen who are outlaws, who are usually domiciled inside the forested parts of the states, and mainly in northern Nigeria, but also in other parts of Nigeria. Now, these gunmen raid villages and then abduct as many as they can, usually women and sometimes children. And then most times they kill the men. Well, it started from 2020, where they would specifically target schools and then abduct pupils, students from those schools. The other category are criminals who operate because the kidnap for ransom industry, quote unquote, is a low risk and a high yield, high profit, activity. They engage in it, target individuals that are considered affluent or that are politically exposed, and then demand for their ransom. Usually this ransom is paid and then they release their victims. Then you've got a third category that are either merchants for ritualists or they are ritualists themselves. So they abduct for ritual purposes. And this is more common in the southern half of the country. But also we see an increase just before elections. And as you probably are aware, 2022 in Nigeria is a pre-election year. So that's one type of kidnapping that is likely to increase.
What attempts have you seen the government making to curb the situation?
Mainly security force actions. So government has deployed the military in virtually every state of the country. That's really the primary way that the security forces are trying to stop it. The police too has two special units. There is an IRT unit, and then there is another tactical unit that has the mandate to stop this abduction. And then, of course, you've got the State Security Service that in Nigeria is popularly called DSS. They are the equivalent of the FBI in the US. They also engage in intelligence gathering and sometimes in law enforcement, measures where they arrest and sometimes attempt to prosecute those that are involved in this kidnapping. So in a nutshell, this is what the government is doing. Unfortunately, however, just like I've explained earlier on, despite these government efforts, we've seen this huge rise in kidnap for ransom incidents in the country.
In the last year, the National Assembly attempted to criminalize ransom, which as a consequence spiked protests from everyday citizens. What is your opinion on that issue?
Now, in this instance, what the people who are opposed to that, move by the National Assembly is that government has not lived up to its own part of the social contract, which is to provide protection. But now government is now trying to impose a restriction on individuals who have no choice but to pay this ransom. The argument is that perhaps government should make certain aspects of this social contract justiciable in such a way that where government fails to provide protection, then the average Nigerian can sue government. But on the side of the government, they are of the view that to incentivize abduction, then they need to take away that ransom element. If the abductors know that they are not going to receive any ransom, then they are probably not going to go into it. I mean, one of the most ridiculous cases I monitored last week is an elderly man in Katsina State who had to remove the roofing in his house to sell that roofing to pay for the ransom for his son that was abducted. That is the extent some family members go to. In Tegina, in Niger State, when pupils in an Islamic school were abducted, the family members, women, had to sell their gold, their jewelry, and little things like that they hold there to gather the money together and pay the ransom. So that it's almost impossible. It sounds utopian if government thinks family love people will not pay ransom for their loved ones to be released. So I think that's the argument. I am of the view that government should enhance its capacity and capability for the protection as contained in the social contract. Section 14, subsection 2 of the Nigerian Constitution makes that provision of security and protection as the primary responsibility of government. So where government shakes on that responsibility, it is unfair, I think, in my opinion, to shift that burden, as it were, to the victim and say, don't pay ransom.
It's time for another break. When we come back, we'll examine the toll that the kidnapping epidemic has on a family when we introduce you to the mother of a girl abducted by Boko Haram, who is still pleading with the government to assist in her daughter's release, nearly 4 years after her abduction. That's coming up in our Women to Watch segment. Welcome back. You're watching Our Voices. It's time for our Women to Watch segment with Siminish Yekoyi. Siminish?
Thanks, Amina, and hello, everyone. I'm happy to bring you this week's Women to Watch segment. Nearly 4 years ago, Boko Haram abducted 110 girls from a school in Dapchi, Nigeria. One girl, Leah Sharibu, remains in captivity. Her mother, Rebecca Sharibu, along with her father, remain hopeful that she will be freed, but say the government is doing nothing for her release. Percy Dibank reports from Yole, Nigeria.
In February 2018, Boko Haram fighters abducted 110 girls from their dormitory at the Government Girls Science and Technical College in Dapchi, located in Nigeria's Yobe State. A month later, the government negotiated the release of most of the girls, but one was left behind. That was Leah Sharibu, a Christian schoolgirl aged 14 at the time of her capture. One of the girls who was released said Boko Haram held her back because she refused to convert to Islam. Leah's mother says they are still counting on the promises made by government of President Muhammadu Buhari regarding her release.
Out of the 110 girls abducted, it's only my daughter that has not been released. Why did he not adopt the same means he used in gaining the release of the others to free my girl? They negotiated for the release of those kidnapped in Katsina State. Why wouldn't they negotiate for my daughter's release? Just one girl.
Security expert Lionel Rollins says the government is caught in a bind when it comes to rescuing Leah.
The only way, though, they can do that is by offering money. Because we can't go and storm the Sambisa forest and, with a forceful rescue. So you have to give money in return for her, or give up some prisoners in return for Leah. The problem with that, though, is if Leah is released and the government paid for her release, all the parents who have children who were kidnapped by Boko Haram, who are also held in the Sambisa, they would ask, well, what about me?
There were reports in 2019 that Leah was delivered of a baby boy in captivity, but her father says that is not true. He is calling on President Buhari to ensure Leah's safe return.
He has promised several times to the family. He promised the nation, he promised the whole world that his administration will do his possible best to see that my daughter return home safely. So I'm pleading to him, being a father, a grandfather, to do his possible best to see my daughter return home safely. Please, I'm begging him.
President Muhammadu Buhari had in 2019 said his administration will ensure the release of all persons in captivity of Boko Haram and other terror groups across the country. Boko Haram alone is believed to be holding more than 100 captives, including some of the Chibok girls the group abducted 7 years ago. Percy Dabang for VOA News, Yola, Nigeria.
Our thoughts remain with her and her family, and we pray for her safe return.
Thank you, Seminesh. Over 150 girls have been freed, but the rest remain captive. And that's where we'll end our show this week. Thanks to my colleagues here on Our Voices, and on behalf of everyone at the Voice of America, I'm Amina Aliyu. Until next time, stay safe.